In the heart of the Himalayas, where the wind seems to be born from the ice itself and the mountains rise like walls of silence, there exists a way of life measured not in clocks, but in endurance. In northern Nepal, above the roads and beyond the tourist maps, human existence unfolds in constant dialogue with the cold, a cold that is not merely temperature, but a permanent condition. Here, isolation is not a geographical accident, it is an accepted fate. For months, snow closes paths, covers rooftops, erases trails. The outside world becomes a distant memory, almost abstract. What remains is the sound of wind slipping through wooden cracks, the snap of fire before dawn, the weight of altitude in the chest. To survive in this landscape is not a heroic act, it is routine. It is waking up knowing that every movement will be slower, every task will demand more breath. The mountain does not threaten, it imposes. And in its immense presence, the human being learns to reduce life to the essential: warmth, shelter, presence. Isolation here does not mean loneliness. It means belonging to a territory that demands silence in order to be understood.
Isolation here has its own geography. Villages rest like white islands between deep valleys, hidden along the slopes of the Himalayas, where the horizon is shaped by successive peaks and the sky always seems closer to the earth. In winter, paths disappear beneath meters of snow, and what in summer was a trail becomes an indistinct, dangerous, silent surface. There are no paved roads, no sirens, no rush. Only narrow passages opened on foot, marked by repeated steps, almost ritualistic. When storms arrive, the outside world ceases to exist. Helicopters do not fly, messages do not arrive. The mountain decides when one may leave and when one must stay. Houses, built from thick stone and dark wood, seem to grow out of the rock itself. Small windows preserve warmth as if guarding ancient secrets. Inside, time moves slowly, like the smoke rising from fireplaces and dissolving into the thin air. In this territory, isolation is not only physical distance, it is a complete sensory experience. The muffled sound of footsteps in the snow, the distant echo of an unseen animal, a silence so deep it becomes a presence.
Dawn high in the Himalayas does not burst into color. It reveals itself slowly, as if the sun must ask the mountains for permission before touching the ice-covered roofs. In northern Nepal, the day begins before the light. It begins with the restrained sound of footsteps on wooden floors, with the patient breath that rekindles the embers from the night before. Inside the houses, fire is the first gesture of survival. It does more than warm the body, it reorganizes the world. The flame illuminates faces still marked by the cold, weathered hands moving slowly, measuring energy. Every movement matters. Rising requires breath. A deep inhale is a constant reminder of the altitude. Outside, the air cuts the skin like a thin blade. Water must be broken free from ice. Animals wait for food. There is no room for hesitation, but there is no haste either. The human rhythm here does not follow clocks. It follows light and necessity. The day is born in silence, almost shy, as the village awakens like a single organism, adjusting once more to the mountain's invisible demand. High in the mountains of the Himalayas, work is not separate from life. It is the very continuation of existence. During Nepal's winter, every task carries a quiet urgency. Cutting firewood is not a domestic chore. It is ensuring that the night can be endured. Feeding the yaks means protecting the only living wealth that withstands the extreme cold. Hands move with the precision learned since childhood. No gesture is wasted. Wood is stacked carefully. Wool is spun slowly by the fire. Seeds are stored like small promises of spring. The body works under layers of heavy clothing, yet even so the cold finds openings, seeps in, constantly reminding one of human fragility. In the terraced fields, now covered in snow, rests the memory of summer. The soil seems asleep, yet beneath the surface it guards the hope of life's return. Meanwhile, inside stone houses, work continues invisible to the distant eyes of the world. Here, to work does not mean to produce. It means to keep alive the possibility of remaining.
In the high valleys of the Himalayas, the path is not merely movement, it is decision. During winter in Nepal, each trail becomes a fragile line across the snow, drawn by repeated footsteps that insist on linking one house to another, one village to the next, one human being to the rest of the world. The passages are narrow, steep, exposed to the wind descending from the ridges like an ancient breath. Suspension bridges sway over partially frozen rivers, creaking under the weight of ice and trust. To cross them is to accept risk as part of routine. There are no signs, no markers. Orientation comes from the body's memory. The foot recognizes the stone beneath the snow. The eye distinguishes safe white from dangerous white. When a storm erases the traces, only the experience accumulated over generations remains. Even in isolation, the villages are not disconnected. The path is the invisible thread that keeps the idea of community alive. It demands quiet courage, but offers something in return: the certainty that no one survives entirely alone in these mountains.
In the dense silence of the Himalayas, memory is not kept in books, but in the deep wrinkles of faces that have learned to endure many winters. In northern Nepal, stories are told around the fire, where the flame slowly lights up expressions and turns each account into a living image. The elders speak of snowstorms that lasted for weeks, of vanished trails, of years when supplies were barely enough. They also speak of abundant summers, generous harvests, weddings celebrated beneath clear skies. The mountain, they say, neither punishes nor rewards. It simply remains. Prayer flags, stretched between houses and cliffs, flutter in the wind like continuous voices, carrying prayers beyond the valleys. Each faded color holds an ancient request, a hope repeated generation after generation. In this isolated territory, to remember is to survive twice. Stories do more than pass the time. They teach limits, strengthen bonds, and remind each listener that every winter endured belongs to an invisible lineage of resilience.
In the harsh winter of the Himalayas, eating is an act of balance between scarcity and care. High in the mountains of Nepal, food does not arrive fresh from the earth. It is the result of months of quiet preparation, of dried grains carefully stored, of yak butter preserved like pale gold. Inside stone houses, the aroma of hot tea blended with thick butter fills the air with a sense of shelter. Simple bowls pass from hand to hand. Barley flour, roasted and ground, becomes a dense dough that sustains the body against the persistent cold. Nothing is wasted. Each portion is measured by real need, not desire. To sit down to eat is also to reaffirm presence. The warmth of the wood stove gathers bodies into a circle, narrowing the distance between people and between them and the mountain itself. Conversations unfold in low voices, almost reverent, as if winter itself were listening. Here, to share food is to share survival, and in that simple gesture, isolation transforms, for a few moments, into silent communion.
On the high slopes of the Himalayas, time is not counted in dates, but in nearly imperceptible transformations. In Nepal's mountainous interior, winter feels eternal while it lasts, yet slowly, the snow begins to yield. First, a thin stream runs beneath the ice. Then, dark patches of earth reappear, like signs of breathing. The transition does not happen overnight. It is a quiet process, closely observed by those who depend on it. The thaw reveals hidden paths, restores routes, widens horizons. The air is still cold, but it no longer cuts with the same intensity. There's a different scent, damp, almost fertile. The houses remain standing, marked by the layers of winter they have endured. Each season leaves its signature on walls, roofs, and bodies. Hands carry scars from the cold. Eyes hold the memory of landscapes once entirely white. The mountain teaches that everything returns, yet nothing comes back the same. Surviving winter is not only about resisting the cold, it is about accepting that every cycle transforms those who remain. Even isolated at the heights of the Himalayas, Nepal's villages do not exist as scattered points in the landscape, but as living organisms, woven together by shared gestures. Continuity here does not depend on grand events. It is built through simple, repeated actions, carried out side by side. When a roof must be reinforced after heavy snowfall, neighboring hands appear without being called. When an animal falls ill, care is distributed among families. Children cross the snow in small groups, learning from an early age that surviving in the mountains means understanding the value of one another. The monks in the small monastery maintain rituals that shape the community's spiritual rhythm, reminding everyone that endurance is also internal. The deep sound of prayers echoes through the valleys, blending with the wind, as if the landscape itself were participating in human continuity. Here, no one faces winter entirely alone. Community does not erase geographic isolation, but transforms it into collective strength. To remain becomes a shared commitment, renewed with each season overcome. As evening falls over the Himalayas, light slowly withdraws from the peaks and slides down the slopes until it disappears behind frozen ridgelines. High in Nepal, silence returns as a definitive presence, enveloping houses, trails, and faces that have learned to measure life not by speed, but by endurance. Here, survival is not a story of conquest. It is a quiet pact with the cold, with the altitude, with the uncertainty of each winter. It is accepting that isolation is not the absence of the world, but another way of being in it. More attentive, more dependent, more aware of both human fragility and strength. The mountain does not bow to man, and perhaps that is precisely what it teaches. To remain is to adapt, without losing essence, to continue even when the path disappears beneath the snow. If this story moved you, stay with us. Subscribe to the channel to follow other narratives where time flows differently and life reveals itself in the quietest places on Earth.